Alex Smith, one of those people in life, I feel like everybody likes him a whole lot more after he's gone. You know what I mean? Alex was not like beloved as the perfect 49er quarterback by any stretch when he was here.
He was borderline hated.
Well, and dealt a bad hand for sure. Different offensive coordinator every single year. Then the Kaepernick thing happens, and everywhere he's been, he's a good quarterback when people want a great one. And so replaced by Kaepernick, followed by replaced by Mahomes. And then he goes through his experience in Washington and becomes an incredibly sympathetic figure. And I think people look back at him and have now forgiven him for the fact that he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not. 49ers chose wrong, but he was still pretty good. And I certainly take his thoughts on the quarterback position. So this is interesting, I think. Alex Smith, via the Giants Talk podcast on NBC Sports Bay Area, having this to say about Brock Purdy.
Really between your ears. You got to be able to process a lot fast. There's not a great way to quantify that yet, right? I mean, there's in our interview process and the combine and all the weird tests you take. They haven't really found a great way to quantify that. And I think Brock showed he's got it right between the ears. Like, it's not too big for him.
And you can tell that immediately.
I mean, this is a guy I know didn't get many reps in training camp. Yeah. Finally got backed up to number 2, so he's running scout team. You're still not getting many reps. And then to step in and just operate the way he did, it wasn't too big. You could see him dial in. And I know in that system there's a lot on the quarterback's plate from a processing standpoint. I think he showed enough that absolutely, he's got it. And again, height, 40, arm strength, like that stuff really is secondary at the NFL level. And I think he's got the things that you're looking for to win sustainably. And again, accuracy, timing, and processing, number one.
So that's with Mayoko on NBC Sports Bay Area and the 49ers Talk podcast. I mean, it's funny. You're listening to him talk, he's got that it thing. He can do all this, that, and the other. Does it lessen it when it's coming from Alex Smith? Because I do feel like some people are concerned that that's who Brock Purdy is. Good, but not great.
Yeah, it doesn't lessen it at all for me. It actually enhances it because Alex Smith came out of Utah as the number 1 overall player. So he was a good enough player to be seen by somebody, the Niners, as the best player in his draft class. And the guy ended up playing for 14 years for a number of different systems. And, you don't have to be the most proficient on the field to have a great understanding about what's going on as a quarterback. When you play that many games, and he ended up starting 167 games in the NFL, to me, you have a good idea of what it takes. Even if you didn't always show that you had the skills to do it, the guy was around long enough to be an expert. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Mike Dunleavy Jr. He played 14 years in the NBA.
It's an interesting comment.
He was highly drafted. He'd never made it, quote unquote, with the Golden State Warriors. He went on to have a good long career. 14 years in the association is legit.
He wasn't bad.
And if you look at Alex Smith's career, he had a somewhat of a Dunleavy-ian career.
I would take Alex's career over Dunleavy's without looking at numbers. But you're right in that we do this to players based on draft position. In other words, had Alex Smith been drafted with the first pick in the second round, how would you feel about his career?
Exactly.
You'd feel
a lot differently.
You'd feel a lot better.
And we think a lot differently about Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant. If, Brock Purdy was taken 3rd overall, then the expectations would be a lot higher even now after what we've seen in a short sample.
Well, and that's relevant to the Trey Lance conversation. And this is one thing that does interest me in terms of how the 49er quarterback position plays out, whether that means that Purdy just takes the reins and he's the quarterback for the next 7 years. Does he get hurt? Does Trey Lance get traded? Does he ever get his shot with the 49ers? All of those things. Let's say the 49ers do have, over the next 5 years, Kyle Shanahan remains the coach and the 49ers do have success. I don't necessarily know if that means the ultimate success, but they continue to be a playoff team year in and year out and compete for Super Bowls, but it's not with Trey Lance. In one form or another, he is not your starting quarterback. Should they be blamed for the pick? In other words, should a fan still be upset with what the 49ers did, which was clearly, again, under that scenario, a mistake, even if it works out okay at the position anyway?
Yes, is my answer.
Okay, why?
Because you could have had other players in those picks that would have been helping you, and maybe they'd be players who would help you more long-term than what you ended up getting for Trey Lance. It still goes down as a mistake, and it feels a little like the James Wiseman question, because the Wiseman failed pick is offset in many ways by the fact you won a championship. James Wiseman didn't even dribble the ball one time in his second year, and you won a championship. And now you've traded James Wiseman, and he is not a bust, but it goes down as a failed pick right now.
Not yet.
Yeah. He may end up being a bust, which is fine, but right now it goes down as a failed pick. Brings me back to the Alex Smith question, even more so because you blew that pick. And we can look back now and all say they should have taken Aaron Rodgers. So many teams didn't take Aaron Rodgers. He fell to the end of the first round. But imagine if the Niners would have taken Aaron Rodgers, because the Niners, they weren't bailed out the way that the Warriors were bailed out in terms of winning a championship. The Niners still haven't won a title since long before they didn't take Aaron Rodgers.
Makes it kind of a fun guy to ask the question. So Alex Smith is asked, does Shanahan deserve blame for drafting Trey Lance?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get into that. I think if you were to say that, hey, listen, if we were just grading draft picks and if you were to play it out and he doesn't, and it's because Brock Purdy does, like, you've also hit on the last pick of the draft, which nobody else has to that level. I still love Trey's future. I think he's incredibly talented. I think he's a great kid that works really hard. And I think he's got... he was so young. He was 20 years old when he got drafted. His college experience was so unique. He's battled some injuries. So for him, he needs to block out the noise, block out the distractions, and continue to go to work and just become the player he wants to be and work towards that. And that's hard. That's not easy to do, especially as a young kid.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I didn't know that that Alex Smith also plays a musical instrument.
A little easy listening.
So
there.
yeah, he's like, "Come here, Mayoko, ask me some questions while I'm strumming on my guitar here on the golf range. Let's talk it out a little bit." I go back and forth on this a little bit. There's no escaping where we sit right now that the Trey Lance trade was a big old mistake. Right now.
Right now, it doesn't look good, Mark.
There's no escaping that.
You traded 2 firsts, actually 3 to move up, and a third, and you did all that to get Trey Lance, and Trey Lance has not been the guy to win the job and keep the job. He won the job. Last year, he got 7 quarters and got hurt, and as of now, that's all she wrote.
You know what's interesting, though? I mean, the fact that you don't escape that, but then something else happens in your favor and you're still a competitive team. If the 49ers win the AFC or the NFC West this year, if they go ahead and do that and we have another playoff experience and Brock Purdy has a solid, healthy year and all of that, I just don't even know. Do you have the bandwidth? Do you have the time and energy to go there? I guess this would be my point. I'm going to get mad at my team for bad picks if they make them all the time. I'm not going to get mad at them for bad picks if they're also mixing in good ones 65% of the time, which I believe the 49ers do, because this is how it goes. There's no coach, there's no GM, there's no team that doesn't have these. Now, this one's excessive. You make a huge swing and a huge trade, and then get somebody that doesn't work out. So that's really excessive. But if the 49ers weren't having success in the draft as a whole, they wouldn't be as good as they are. Look at all of the homegrown talent on this team. Look at all of it. I mean, it's all over the place. Their whole receiving core, Kittle, Warner, Bosa, on and on. So, I don't know. I excuse it. And I know that you're not supposed to do that. I do. Like, I bake in a third of your picks are just not going to work.
Yes, but I like what you're saying about baking that part in, but when you make big moves in the first round, those are ones that you got to hit on. And when you give up multiple first-round picks to make that big swing, that can't be a swing and a miss. Now, what I bake into it, Mark, is the idea that this team is still winning. And yes, you get credit for Brock Purdy. I'm with Alex Smith on that and the easy listening tunes with Matt Mayoko. when you hit on Mr. Irrelevant and he becomes a great draft pick, that becomes a part of your record as well. So, yes, it's a big swing and a miss to use 2 first-round picks and a third to move up for a guy who right now looks like is not going to work out. Now, there's still time.
Sure.
And Alex is high on Trey Lance and his ability, and maybe he'll go on to be a player somewhere else. We don't yet know how this story is going to end with Trey Lance, but to me, the two things can be equally true. You do get credit for, and you look back at all of the late-round picks that have hit, but there have also been some high first-round picks that have missed. So you have to look at all of it on balance, but for me, when you use 2 firsts and a third to move up, that pick becomes a bigger value hit or miss than a 7th-round throw-in that gets you Brock Purdy.
Well, you missed on 3 picks.
Yes.
Early ones.
Actually, yeah, 2 firsts and a third.
Yeah.
Those all were misses.
Yeah.
And I just was looking at those drafts. Those picks all got traded to other teams.
Again,
the 1 first in 2022 wound up on a 4th different team. So first-round picks are kind of like, baseball prospects, where the value in that pick sometimes is greater than what the player ends up being.
Didn't one of the 49ers picks end up going to Kansas City for Tyreek Hill?
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Yeah. Yeah. So who knows where those things are going to end up.
But I would look at like Javon Kinlaw in 2020 in the first round as big a miss as what's happening with Trey Lance.
No doubt. No doubt.